Okay, so today we're going to talk about joy. Okay, we're going to talk about how we find joy in our lives, how we cultivate joy in our lives in this season of joy. Okay, if you have any ideas, shout them out. We may get into some discussion later. When I'm talking about joy, I am not talking about happiness. Even though happiness is very cool, I am not talking about pleasure. I'm talking about fundamental joy. And we all know the difference, right?
No.
Okay. We're going to ask that same question later. Okay, here's one difference. Happiness and pleasure are things we can get. They are things we can go out and find. They are things we can do, right? You can eat, you can drink, you can do other things which you can't mention on a family video. Those things give you happiness and pleasure, right? Okay. You can go to a movie you like. You can go eat dinner with friends. You can do things that make you happy. I don't think joy is like that. Joy is something that just arises. It arises spontaneously with a sense of, wow, it finds you, right? C.S. Lewis wrote a book called Surprised by Joy. And that's the way it is. How do we find joy in our lives? Not by going and buying it or seeking it or learning how to do a skill or something that brings us happiness. We find joy in our lives by cultivating our inner garden so that it arises. So that we are fertile soil for the awakening of joy. In Surprised by Joy, C.S. Lewis, who, his books are interesting. He was a Christian and he made a journey from atheist to agnostic to Christian, and it's interesting to watch. But in his book, Surprised by Joy, he says, the presence came upon him without warning or explanation, and it departed just as it had come. It's something that just arises in our soul. His first experience, one might write off as mere nostalgia, and this is how he described it. He said, as I stood beside a flowering currant bush on a summer day, there suddenly arose in me, without warning, as if from a depth of years, not of years, but of centuries, the memory of an earlier morning at the old house, when my brother had brought his toy garden into the nursery. Don't you just have moments when you think of something as insignificant as that, where joy just arises in you? It's a mix of some grief, some loss, some longing, some hope, and some remembering. It's an amazingly, it's a yearning, it's a connection, it's a remembering. But it's not an experience like happiness or pleasure. It just arises. He describes it as a longing for the ineffable. A longing for something that we cannot describe, right? Sometimes when our language is so poor, we just cannot even articulate the wonderful principles that surround us. We take the paucity of our language and we ascribe it to the principles we're trying to talk about, and we shouldn't do that. Joy is a deep, profound longing for something we cannot name, but a place we have been. An experience and an emotion that we remember. And we just long to get back there. And it's momentary, it's fleeting, it's like that. That's the difference. That's my long answer to your short question. That's the difference that I see between happiness and joy. It's never in our power to go get, but it's always in our power if we remember to receive an experience. Does that make sense? We don't create it. We cultivate an inner life. That's what all our spiritual tools are for. We cultivate an inner life that permits it to arise. And the deeper our inner life is, the more persistent we are in creating that profound connection, the more often we will feel it. The clearer our channels are for having it arise. That is the purpose of our spiritual practices, right? That's to me what spirituality is. And that what for so many religion has not become. You know, the difference between spirituality and religion. As I was researching this article, I came across an article that is entitled, hang on, you're going to love this, 9 Ways Atheists Get More Joy Out of Life. Okay, that caught my interest. And I thought, how do atheists get more joy out of life? And it's fascinating. But what it basically said is, and see if this resonates with you, is there's so much religiosity that is just grim, that is just burdensome, that just focuses on duty and threats and shame and guilt. And who can feel joyful in the midst of that? And so this article says, how are atheists getting more joy out of life? Well, for one thing, they can engage in discovery without prejudgment. They can see wonderful things. They can see the cosmos develop. They can see all sorts of wonderful eruptions of amazing things about them, and they don't have to fit it in a box as to who caused it or what it is. They're like, wow, and they can take it wherever it leads them. They don't mind saying, I don't know, because they are open to learning. As I go through this list, which is not a long list, keep in mind that this is also where spirituality leads us. Right? This is where an open, loving, wonderful, accepting spirituality leads us to these same things. Another reason that this article said atheists find more joy is they, without hesitation, they take joy in the joy of others. They don't compare. They don't feel that your joy is less joy for me. And then I thought, well, that's what Buddhists do. Joy in the joy of others is called mudita. It's one of the 4 immeasurables. It's one of the things that brings value to our lives, the ability to find joy in the happiness of others, in the success of others, pure, unadulterated amazement and gratitude for the happiness and success of others. That's also the Buddhist principle of mudita. They also engage in activities that the rest of us are burdened with guilt about. Drinking, not to excess, but food, sex, whatever. They can say, this is wonderful, this is part of life, this is what makes me a happy, vibrant human. Well, that's where our spirituality takes us, to engage in the gifts we have been given without guilt. Right?
Sure.
Yes, that's exactly so. So what I think is 9 ways atheists may get more joy out of life, 9 ways those of us who have a wonderful, open, accepting, and loving spirituality get joy out of life the same way. Right? We take that box, which so many have ascribed to religion, and we say, that's not my box. I just blow those walls out, and I realize God is everywhere. I was reading Richard Rohr the other day, whom I really love, and somebody asked him, what is a Christian? I told this to you the other day. What is a Christian? Okay, we can have all sorts of explanations of Christians. Christians can be people who believe that Jesus is our Savior, people who believe in Jesus as the Son of God, whatever. He said, I think a Christian is someone who sees Christ everywhere. Think about that. I see God in you, and you, and you, and you, and my whole life is subsumed in seeing the loving presence of the divine. That is a Christian. That may also be a Muslim, it may also be a Jew, it may also be someone who engages in a deep spirituality no matter what their faith tradition. Is someone who sees the face of God all around, wherever you look. Because that's the truth of who we are. That's the truth of the God soup in which we swim. Right? The reality of the essence in which we are. Okay, so as I was thinking about this talk, I came across another article called The 8 Pillars of Joy, and that's what I want to talk about today. I want to talk about what brings us joy and what kills joy. And I'm going to do it in 18 more minutes.
All right.
Because I talk like a New York tobacco auctioneer. Okay. For 1 week in 2013, the Dalai Lama and Archbishop Desmond Tutu got together and they talked about joy. These 2 pillars of our world spirituality talked about what brings us joy. And they distilled 8 pillars, I'm going to add a 9th, they distilled 8 pillars of what to them are the attributes which, if we cultivate them, will give us this inner garden, my image, wherein joy can arise more often in our lives. So I'm just going to tell you what they are. Because we are a place of practical spirituality, and when you leave that door every week, I want you to have the tools to try something out, to make your lives better. So here's the list that they came up with, and my take on the list. The first is perspective, right? In mediation, we call this taking the balcony view. The Dalai Lama calls it taking a God's eye perspective, right? It means that we get to take a step back. We get to, as the Stoics say, look at what is happening in front of us and say, what is this? We get to say, this is a brief moment in my life. My life is much more than that. There is a vast ocean of events happening. This is one of them. What is the lesson here? What can I get from this? What does this show me? And what is my practice to get through it? Right? Another thing I was thinking, this talk might be called Melanie's Riff on Joy. Okay, sorry. One of the lessons I learned last week when we are going through tough times was to do two things. And I just want to pass it on to you because I find it very useful. When things are happening and my perspective all of a sudden just diminishes because I'm so focused in the moment, the first question to ask is, what is going on right now? What is going on right now in my body, in my emotions, in my heart, and around me? Take a look at what is going on right now, because that gives us perspective. It steps us back and lets us take a moment and be the observer as to what is threatening to ruin our equanimity, upset our balance. And the second question after what is going on right now is, what is my practice? We moor ourselves, we ground ourselves in our practices. What is our practice? Well, I had some things going on last week. I asked that question, what is going on now? And my practice was just to breathe. My practice was to stop and breathe. And sometimes it's just that simple. But those two questions are a stepping stone back to perspective and to balance. The other thing that perspective does is it gives us a view into the lives of others, and it helps us build empathy. Because we can step back and see what's going on, not just with ourselves, but with others. And what is empathy? Empathy is a tool of connection. And we are people of connection. When we can not step into the shoes of someone else, because we never know what those shoes feel like, but when we can connect on an emotional level, on a heart level, and just hold that space with them, and hold that pain with them, hold whatever's going on, that builds a heart-to-heart connection. And that is what deepens our spiritual course, so that we can be people of greater joy and compassion and kindness and love. It opens the door to togetherness. All right, so what's the next pillar? Humility. I love this word. Humility is not naysaying yourself. It's not saying that everybody else is better than you. It's realizing that you are the same. It's realizing that you are no better and no worse. We are all just that single drop of rainwater descending toward the same ocean, right? We are different, but we are all the same. That's what humility is the travails of that person, the experience of that person. We can connect on an empathetic level and realize they may be different from ours, but at the end of the day, they're really the same. Humility breaks down the walls that so often we build. I'm better than you. I have an advanced degree. You don't. I have more money. I'm this. I'm that. Forget it. I almost said a bad word. Does this thing edit? No. Forget it. Those are walls that separate us. Our humility teaches us that there are no walls. It jumps us over those walls. It enables us to connect again, heart to heart, when we realize we are the same. And there is nothing separating us. Humility is the next one. The next one is humor. We love humor here, right? We do. Why? Because it's the great equalizer. It's the great humanizer, right? You cannot be mad at somebody and be sharing a joke with them. You cannot be mad at somebody and will be laughing at the same thing. During this week, this guy, Douglas Abrams, wrote a book about the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu together for that week, and he wrote that they seem to be as much a comedy duo as two venerable spiritual leaders. I mean, look at the Dalai Lama. Every time you see the man, he's laughing. He's smiling. He's just telling jokes. And this is a guy who has had some serious trouble in his life. But humor levels us all, and it brings us all together. It enables us to see our common humanity. It's also good for us. All these studies show that humor lowers your blood pressure, it makes you live longer. I mean, all these physiological benefits of humor. Okay, what's the next one? That's not a question I'm going to tell you. It's acceptance, right? Acceptance is a profoundly strong spiritual principle. We talk about it here all the time, right? What do the Buddhists teach us? Life is suffering. Why is it suffering? Because we are attached. We are attached to things turning out our way. Guess what? You're all going to want to write this down. They don't. This is our insight for the day. They don't turn out our way. They turn out another way. They may turn out a better way. They may turn out a worse way that turns out to be a better way. We just don't know. But acceptance is the key to being able to move forward. It's the key to not be stuck in where we have been. The Dalai Lama, a spiritual Buddhist teacher, quoted Shantideva, a Hindu sage, I love this place, where he said, "Why be unhappy about something if it can be remedied? And what is the use of being unhappy about something if it cannot be remedied? If it can be remedied, fix it. If it cannot be remedied, why worry about it? Move on. Do what you can." Remember what the Stoics teach us? We focus on what we can control, and the rest of it we let go. Why? Because that dissipates unnecessary emotion, and it puts our focus where it matters, on the differences we can make. So acceptance of things we cannot change. It doesn't mean being passive. It doesn't mean giving up, because there is so much we can do. There is so much we can create and connect and join and build to make a difference in our lives and the lives of our community and our world. Acceptance means don't waste time sweating stuff that we cannot change. Okay, the next is forgiveness. I once heard a wonderful definition of forgiveness. This was from Ellen Davenport, that Unity minister that I quote a lot that I like. She said, forgiveness is giving up the obsession that things should have been different. Right?
Say it again.
Obsession means giving up the obsession that things in the past should have been different.
Forgiveness means it.
Forgiveness, yeah. That's what forgiveness is. It's saying this happened. You have to let it go. That's also part of acceptance, because if you keep obsessing about it, if you keep saying, this should have been different, how useful is that? It wasn't. So you need to move on with what happened. Holding on to grievances just poisons us, and it stops us from being clear about the way the world is now and moving forward given what is happening now. Remember the first thing I said, what is going on right now? That means that we have to be aware of what is going on right now. And we have to build our next step knowing what is going on now. And if we are focused on grievances on the past, we are stuck. And when we are stuck, we are not growing. We are not loving or giving or laughing or being grateful or any of it. We are stuck. So forgiveness does not mean that we forget. It just means that we put it in its place and move on, knowing that it happened and we cannot change it. Okay, the next is gratitude. We know about gratitude. We love gratitude. It's a fundamental spiritual practice. Focus on the word practice. It is fundamental to so much of what we do. Abrams writes, gratitude is the recognition of all that holds us in the web of life, and all that has made it possible to have the life that we have and the moment we are experiencing. Gratitude brings us to the present moment. When we are grateful, we are right here experiencing the wonder that is around us. The next pillar is gratitude. The other good thing about a gratitude practice is our minds kind of have it, because we are basically those limbic animals, we have this brain that fight or flight. We have a default negative bent. When something happens, if you're like me, we instantly go into, oh my God, that's a bad thing. A gratitude practice turns our paradigm around to, that may be a good thing, or it may not be a bad thing. Let's just take a look at it, see what it is, and move on in a spirit of being positive and being joyful. A gratitude practice brings us to that place of wonder and joy where we can continue to move forward. The next pillar is compassion. A saying that's often attributed to the Buddha is this. He says, what is that one thing which when you possess, you have all other virtues. It is compassion. It's a sense that connects us to others when we see others suffering. It's a power that lets us be there for them, focusing on them, not feeling what they're feeling, but being with them to hold space and honor what they are feeling. And let them know that you are there for what they are feeling. And that your heart is open to holding them and holding their pain. That is compassion, and it is not pity. Pity is just kind of feeling sorry for people. That is not compassion. Compassion is much more open-hearted than that. It's much more connecting than that. Do y'all see the difference between those two things? Pity is almost, I really feel sorry for you and thank God I'm not you. You know? Compassion is when you step into that space with them and hold it with them so that they know they are not alone. The Dalai Lama said, when we think of alleviating other people's suffering, our own suffering is reduced. That is the true secret to happiness. And we know that true. We know that's true from the connections we make with others, from the work we do with others. How good do you feel when you step out and you help somebody? Right? That is cultivating your garden of joy, as opposed to just going out and having an experience for you that makes you happy. I did something the other day that really brought me a lot of joy, and it was totally unexpected joy. I just brought somebody some chicken soup because they were sick. Such a small thing, you know? Now the good news was I didn't make that chicken soup. So they are moving toward health as opposed to greater illness. But no, I mean, I could have spent that time doing something else, reading a book, or who knows. But just that one thing gave me such a surprising feeling of just, this has been a good day. It was such an uplifting thing, and it was such a small thing. Those are the steps we can take that plant the seeds for a more consistent experience of joy. Okay, we're getting through the 8 pillars. The last one is generosity. Generosity is giving to people because it doesn't subtract from you, it adds to you. We have such a zero-sum mentality, don't we? That taking away, that you're, if I give you happiness, it means I have less. That is so not true. It's like compound interest. It just grows. Generosity fills our hearts, and it fills the hearts of those to whom we give. Elizabeth Dunn wrote, people who give experience greater long-term satisfaction, whether that giving is large or small. That's why every faith tradition embraces generosity. It's a closely akin to service, because we are meant to connect, and that is one of the fundamental ways that we do it. Okay, the last thing that came from the Dalai Lama and Desmond Tutu was the joy from community. Why? Because community supports us, it brings us together, it connects us. We are all on our own individual path, but being in community as we take those paths makes each step so much richer. Because we can share, we can celebrate, we can grow, we love each other. That connection to us with each other is a vital pillar in our individual paths. It teaches us all these other virtues, humility, generosity, compassion. We couldn't have those lessons unless we were as connected as we are. So we are each other's students and we are each other's teachers as we go through building our own individual spiritual journeys. And the last one I put in, this is Melanie's 9th pillar, is wonder. Just wonder. Just the knowing that there is more, and we are a part of it, and we can grasp it, and we can express it. It's just that feeling that, maybe it's a part of joy. It's just that feeling that there is more, and we yearn for it, and sometimes we feel it, and sometimes we know it. C.S. Lewis wrote, "If I find in myself desires which nothing in this world can satisfy, the only logical explanation is that I was made for another world." Think about that. Yeah, I think we all were. I think we were made for this one, and I think we were made for other ones as well. And we do a disservice to ourselves when we limit ourselves to this one, because we are on the threshold of the other one, which we can reach right now, which we can experience right now. So that's the 9th I would add. Just wonder. Just taking a moment to realize the inexpressible amazement of being alive, of being able to talk to each other, connect with each other, serve each other. What a gift. We don't realize it until we take a minute and just think about it, and just breathe into it and know it and say thank you for it. Okay. Okay, now here's a question. Have I answered that earlier question of what is the difference between happiness and joy? What gives you joy? What is your take on joy after all this?
Sometimes I think happiness can happen within an incident going on. But
Yeah.
joy is an attitude that you carry through life.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
through everything that happens. And it's something to be cultivated. Because you can find joy in the little things you're even talking about.
Yeah.
And that's what, and I think when we go to the end of our lives, it's going to be the little things that mean the most.
I think you're right. So joy in that sense is an expectation that life is going to deliver wonder to you.
I love that wonder, that just to be in awe of life.
Yeah.
Because miraculous things happen.
Miraculous things happen when you notice them.
Exactly.
And when you, it's like we said last week, love waits on welcome, not on time. Right?
Right.
The same thing is with wonder. It just waits on welcome. Our job is just to say yes. It's just to look around and welcome the wonder that is around us. Okay. Any other thoughts on joy? This is all very doable. Gay.
Well, last night
Great
I
night.
had my kids and grandkids over
Yeah.
do my tree. And I just felt this joy for a while before I started getting really wild. And the 1-year-old, he's walking and he's smiling and it was just really fun, like I said, for a while.
Yeah. Well, you'll remember that and you'll experience that again.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I feel joy a lot in different things. I was going through some old papers. I found some old boyfriend letters. And I just felt joy for that time,
Yeah. Okay. All right, now, it's been 20 minutes. I also have a list of 10 things that steal your joy.
Okay.
Your choice.
Yeah, no, let's hear 'em.
Okay, 10 things. Okay, 10 things that steal your joy. What?
I want to hear them.
She speaks for everyone.
She speaks for everyone. Okay, I'm going to go through this list. I'm going to go through this list and see if any of these, as we say, resonate with you. Complaining. Okay, yes, because then we're focusing on the negative. This one was so good for me. This was my life lesson from yesterday. Procrastination. Oh my God, because then what? You just burden yourself with stuff you have to do. You don't get it done. It's like stuff keeps getting added to your list and you're like, throwing rocks in a bag you're carrying around. Every morning you pick it up and you're carrying those same damn rocks around, right? Get it done. Procrastination is a joy killer. Okay. Gossip, yes. Gossip is a joy killer. Why? Because it mires you in something that's pedestrian. It mires you in, stop laughing. It mires you in something that is less than you are. That is not who we are, is to be talking about each other and spreading things, whether they're true or not. Who cares? Aren't there better uses of our time? Aren't there more uplifting uses of our time? Yes, so gossip is a joy killer. Okay, here's the next one. I'm not going to ask for a show of hands on this one. Approval seeking.
Oh yeah.
Okay. Being liked by everybody is so overrated. Okay, nobody's liked by everybody. But you can't worry about it. I don't have any control over whether people like me, over whether people like what I talk. Who knows? All I can control is the best I can do. Right? And whether you walk out of there saying, my God, that was transformational, or I'll never get that 20 minutes again, is not up to me. Right? Sydney.
One thing I got from that old TV series, One Day at a Time,
Uh-huh.
the mother was advising her daughter, and she said, you can really seek approval from everyone, and half the people will like you and half the people won't. Or you don't care about approval. And half the people will like it.
Yeah.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, no, that's true. And meanwhile, you haven't wasted your time worrying about it. Or you haven't done things which you think will get their approval, and you have no idea. Okay, it's these constructs we make ourselves. I really want Asha to like me. And I think Asha will like me if I do the following 3 things, which Asha has never communicated to me. I just make it up.
Yep.
And then I also decide in my incredibly rich imagination whether she likes me or not.
Right.
My God, I'm so efficient. I don't need any of you. I can suffer on my own. Seriously. You know, so approval seeking. Okay. Next is not keeping your word. Okay, that's an important one. Why? Because again, it's not acting in integrity. It's not being who we are. Just keeping our word uplifts us. And not keeping our word, it just diminishes us, and we feel it and we know it. Next is negative self-talk. I don't know if any of you engage in that. Hello, negative self-talk. Attachment to circumstances, we talked about that. Release, forgiveness will get us past that. Living in the past, yeah, we all do that. One of the things, it's funny, one of the things that A Course in Miracles teaches, if you go through the daily workbook, one of the lessons in the daily workbook is, when I look at that fill in the blank, I see only the past. When I look at this cup, I see the past. When I look at Marina, I see the past. What am I seeing? Am I seeing her? Not to pick on you. Am I seeing her, or am I seeing all my past experiences of her? Which is it? Open yourself up to looking at, to seeing what you are looking at now. And not living in the past. Not looking at a bundle of assumptions and judgments and past experiences. Or assumptions about past experiences. So living in the past is a joy killer. And fear of the future. Yeah. Yeah. Again, that's where it gets back to, we do what we can. Right? We all have things we fear in the future. If you're a parent, you fear for your kids. Or if you're not, you fear for those you love. You fear for our world. You fear... This is the toughest spiritual practice, is to stop and just to focus on those things we can do and work on those things we can change. And we just have to release the outcome. That is so easy to say and it is so hard to do. But fear of the future will bind us, will diminish us, and will remove our energies from doing things which are more important. Okay, the last thing which was in this list of joy killers, he called or she called prayerlessness. I don't agree with that word. To me, having a daily spiritual practice and an awareness of your own inner life is fundamental to creating an environment of joy. Now, that is for me. Can I do that having a faith tradition? Yes. Can I do that having no faith tradition? Yes. You absolutely can. Just having a sense of who you are and the depth of what you are will lead you to that sense of joy, whether you believe in a specific deity, a non-deity, or whatever. That is not a requirement. A theology is not a requirement for a spiritual practice. It just is not. So, I guess that's our assignment for joy. Those are our thoughts on joy. And I want you to go out and have a joyful week and month and year and just be those lights that you are. Be that presence of joy that you are. All right, let's take these thoughts into meditation.